Now let's begin. The screen door slammed behind Glenn Castillo as he stepped into the kitchen, still wearing his workout clothes. 21 years of military service had left him with habits that died hard. Up at 0500, run 5 miles calisthenics, tactical drills in the backyard that his neighbors had stopped questioning years ago. Retirement didn't mean soft. It never would. Dad! 7-year-old Marcus crashed into his legs, but something was wrong. The boy's hug was tentative, careful. Glenn's trained, I caught it immediately. The way Marcus favored his left side, the slight wince when his father's hand brushed his right shoulder. Hey champ, how was Grandma and Grandpa's? Glenn knelt down, hands on his son's shoulders. The boy's eyes darted away. Marcus, look at me. The kid's lower lip trembled. Glenn's pulse quickened. The same internal alarm that had kept him alive through operations in 12 countries. Something was very wrong. Marcus, show me your arm. I can't. The whisper was barely audible. Carolyn emerged from the hallway. Phone pressed her ear, laughing at something. She waved dismissively at Glenn. Mom, I'll call you back. Yes, he's fine. He's being dramatic. She ended the call. Glenn, he's fine. Kids exaggerate. Show me his arm. Glenn's voice dropped to the tone that had made insurgents reconsider their life choices. Now, Carolyn's expression flickered. Annoyance, then something else. Calculation. It's nothing. My family has traditions you wouldn't understand. Glenn carefully rolled up Marcus's sleeve. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. A brand. Circular, about 2 inches in diameter. The skin was raised, angry red, still healing. In the center was a symbol, a stylized K, with 3 lines radiating from it like a crown. Jesus Christ. Glenn's hand shook. Not from fear. From rage, so pure it threatened to consume him. Who did this? Grandpa said it's how they mark property, Marcus whispered. He said I'm a Coke now. That I belong to the family. Glenn looked up at Carolyn slowly. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, chin lifted. In that moment, he didn't recognize the woman he'd married 9 years ago. Or maybe he'd never really known her at all. Pack your things, Glenn said quietly. You're leaving. Carolyn laughed. It was a sound he'd heard from her father, Roy Koch, the patriarch who'd built a manufacturing empire in the Midwest. Dismissive. Entitled. Or what, Glenn? You going to threaten me? I'll call the police. Tell them about your PTSD, your anger issues. Who do you think they'll believe? A decorated veteran with classified psychological files, or a devoted mother? Glenn pulled out his phone. 1 name in his contacts. 1 number he'd been told to only use in true emergencies. He pressed dial. This is Castillo. Authorization code Echo 7 Tango 69er. I need a pickup. Family emergency. Hostile in the home. He paused. Affirmative. Make it clean. Carolyn's smile faltered. What are you doing? Calling in a favor. Glenn kept his eyes on his son, gently applying ointment to the burn from the first aid kit. Marcus winced, but didn't cry. Tough kid. Too tough for 15 minutes. You can pack, or you can leave with nothing. Your choice. You're insane. I'm not going anywhere. This is my house, too. Not anymore. The laugh died in her throat when 2 black SUVs pulled up exactly 14 minutes later. 4 men in tactical gear emerged, faces impassive. One of them, Santos Carrillo, Glenn's former second-in-command, walked up the driveway like he owned it. Sir. Santos nodded. Where do you need her? Carolyn backed up, face pale. This is kidnapping. This is illegal. You branded my 7-year-old son like cattle, Glenn said softly. You think I give a damn about legal right now? You've got 60 seconds to pack. These gentlemen will escort you to a hotel. You'll stay there until lawyers figure out custody arrangements. You come near my son again without my permission, and what happens next won't involve lawyers. She looked at Santos, at the other men, at Glenn's face. Whatever she saw there made her grab her purse and keys. She was in her car within 3 minutes, one of the SUVs following her out. Santos remained behind. Christ, Glenn. When you said family emergency, he looked at Marcus, who was watching the TV Glenn had turned on, trying to distract him with cartoons. What the hell happened? Her family happened. The Koches. Midwest money. Manufacturing empire. I need to know what they're really into. Santos. Because normal families don't brand children. I'll make some calls. But Glenn, you know I'm retired too. I can still help, but it's not like before. I know. I just need information. Can you stay with Marcus for an hour? I need to visit Roy Koch. Tonight. Santos nodded. Be careful. Rich families like that have lawyers and politicians on speed dial. I'm counting on it. The Koch estate sat on 40 acres outside the city, surrounded by 12-foot walls and security cameras. Glenn parked his truck 2 miles away and approached on foot, moving through the woods with the same silent efficiency that had let him infiltrate a warlord's compound in Somalia. The cameras were good, expensive, but they were positioned for vehicles, not someone who knew how to move in shadows. He cleared the wall at the blind spot near the east corner, dropping into a crouch in the manicured gardens. The main house was massive, neo-colonial, white pillars, the kind of wealth that came from generations of exploitation. Lights blazed from the second-floor study. Glenn used a glass cutter on the sunroom door, slipped inside, and moved through the dark house like smoke. Every instinct from 2 decades of black ops operations kicked in: muscle memory, environmental awareness, controlled breathing. He was 43 years old, but could still move like he was 25. The study door was ajar. Roy Koch sat behind a mahogany desk, sipping scotch alone. 72 years old, silver hair, the kind of face that appeared in business magazines under headlines about American success stories. He didn't hear Glenn enter. Didn't know he had company until Glenn locked the door and sat in the chair across from him. Roy's hand moved toward a drawer, probably a gun, but froze when he saw Glenn's eyes. I wouldn't. Glenn's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Let's talk instead. Castillo, I should have known you'd come here making threats. Carolyn said you'd overreact. You branded my son. Glenn leaned forward. Explain that to me. Make me understand why anyone would burn a child's flesh with a hot iron. Roy's expression shifted into something paternal, condescending. It's tradition. Every male in the Koch family bears the mark. It shows they're part of something bigger than themselves. It's an honor. Marcus is 7. I received mine at 6. My father at 5. It's how we maintain family unity. How we remind everyone that they belong to the Koch legacy. Roy swirled his scotch. You're an outsider, Glenn. You don't understand old families, old money, old ways. Try me. Roy studied him, then smiled. The kind of smile that preceded something terrible. The Koch family has been in America for 6 generations. We built this country's infrastructure. Factories, steel mills, assembly lines. We've employed thousands. Shaped communities. Politicians answer our calls. Judges rule in our favor. We're not just a family. We're an institution. And the brand? Insurance. Anyone bearing the mark knows they're bound to family interests. They understand that loyalty isn't optional. It's encoded into their flesh. Roy leaned back. Marcus will thank us someday. When he inherits his share of the empire, when he understands the power that comes with the Koch name. Glenn's jaw tightened. He's not inheriting anything from you. He's not even going to know your name after this. Really? Roy laughed. You think you can just walk away? Carolyn is my daughter. Marcus is my grandson. I have the best lawyers in 3 states. I have judges in my pocket. I have investigators who can dig up every classified file on you. And don't think they won't leak what you did in Yemen or Colombia or anywhere else Uncle Sam sent you to get his hands dirty. Threatening me with my service record? That's your play. It's called leverage. Here's what's going to happen, Glenn. You're going to apologize to Carolyn. You're going to bring Marcus back to family dinners. You're going to accept that he's a Koch and Kochs follow Koch traditions. Or I'll destroy you. Not just financially. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. A killer. A government weapon with PTSD and anger issues. Unfit to raise a child. Glenn stood slowly. I came here to give you a chance to apologize. To admit you made a mistake. To maybe find a way to keep this from getting ugly. And now you show me exactly who you are. Glenn moved to the door, unlocked it. This was your last peaceful night, Roy. I promise you that. Roy's smile widened. I'm terrified. A washed-up soldier making threats. Get out of my house before I call the real police. Not your mercenary friends. Glenn paused at the threshold. 21 years. Black Ops. Classified missions across 6 continents. You know what I learned in all that time, Roy? The most dangerous enemies aren't the ones with guns or bombs. They're the ones who think they're untouchable. The ones who forget that money and power are just illusions. And illusions shatter real easy when someone knows where to apply pressure. He left Roy Koch sitting in his study, still smiling, still confident. That confidence wouldn't last long. Back home, Santos had Marcus asleep on the couch. Kid's tough. Barely cried when I changed his bandage. Asked me if his mom was coming back. What did you tell him? That his dad would figure everything out. Was I wrong? Glenn looked at his son, small, vulnerable, branded like property. No, you weren't wrong. He turned to Santos. I need you to make those calls now. Everything on the Koch family. Business dealings, personal connections, legal troubles, rumors, gossip. I want to know every dirty secret that family has buried. You're going after them? I'm going to dismantle them. Santos. Piece by piece. Until there's nothing left but ashes and regret. Santos nodded slowly. I'll call in some markers. But Glenn, people like the Koches, they're connected. This could get messy. It already is messy. My son has third-degree burns because some rich asshole thinks tradition justifies child abuse. Glenn's voice was steel. I've faced down terrorists, cartels, and warlords. Roy Koch is just another target. He just doesn't know it yet. After Santos left, Glenn sat beside Marcus, gently adjusting the blanket. The boy stirred, eyes fluttering open. Dad, is Mom coming back? Not tonight, champ. Maybe not for a while. But you're safe here. I promise. Grandpa said the brand means I'm strong now. Like him. Marcus's voice was small, uncertain. Is that true? Glenn felt something crack inside his chest. No, buddy. Strength isn't something someone burns into you. It's something you build yourself. Through choices, through courage, through standing up for what's right even when it's hard. You're already strong. You survived something terrible, and you're still here, still brave. That's real strength. Marcus nodded, eyes closing again. Within minutes, he was asleep. Glenn pulled out his laptop and started typing. Names, connections, business records. The Koch Manufacturing Group had subsidiaries across 12 states. Government contracts worth billions. But every empire had cracks, and Glenn had spent 2 decades learning how to exploit weaknesses. He worked through the night, building a profile on Roy Koch and his family. What he found made his blood run cold for the second time in 12 hours. The branding wasn't just tradition. It was documentation. Hidden in the footnotes of obscure legal filings and estate planning documents, Glenn found references to marked beneficiaries and blood-bound inheritors. The Koch family didn't just brand their children for tradition. They branded them to maintain control of trust funds, business shares, and assets that could only be accessed by verified family members bearing the Koch seal. It was a system of generational control masked as heritage. Children who bore the brand were legally bound to family decisions until age 25. They couldn't sell their shares, couldn't leave family businesses, couldn't even access their inheritance without approval from the family council, which Roy controlled absolutely. It was slavery dressed up in legalese and family values. Glenn kept digging. Found more. The Koch family had been sued 17 times in the past 40 years by former employees, business partners, even distant relatives. Every case had been settled with NDAs. Every plaintiff had disappeared from public view, relocated, bought off, or silenced through methods Glenn could only guess at. One case stood out. 8 years ago, a nephew, Philip Koch, had tried to leave the family business and start his own company. He'd been found dead 3 months later. Ruled a suicide. No investigation beyond the initial report. The detective who closed the case had retired 6 months later and bought a vacation home in the Bahamas. Glenn sat back, mind racing. This wasn't just about Marcus. This was about a family that had been operating like a crime syndicate for decades, hiding behind respectability and wealth. Roy Koch wasn't just an abusive grandfather. He was a predator who turned his own bloodline into a prison. And he made the mistake of targeting Glenn Castillo's son. Glenn pulled up his encrypted email and started typing. He had contacts all over the world, intelligence analysts, journalists, lawyers who specialized in taking down powerful people. He began reaching out, carefully building a network. By dawn, he had responses from 6 people, all of them interested, all of them ready to help take down the Coke empire. Roy Coke had called Glenn a washed-up soldier. He was about to learn what a soldier could do when he had nothing left to lose and every reason to fight. 3 days later, Glenn met with Drew Shannon in a diner 30 miles outside the city. Drew was former CIA, now working as a private investigator specializing in white-collar crime. They'd worked together in Pakistan, Glenn on tactical operations, Drew on intelligence gathering. If anyone could dig up dirt that even the Koches couldn't bury, it was Drew. "I've got something," Drew said, sliding a folder across the table. "But you're not going to like it." Glenn opened it. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and legal documents. "Explain." Coke Manufacturing Group has a subsidiary called Heritage Holdings. On paper, it's a real estate investment firm. In reality, it's a front for labor trafficking. Glenn's blood went cold. What? They import workers from Eastern Europe and Central America under H-2B visas, promise them good jobs, then essentially enslave them in Coke factories. The workers live in company housing, shop at company stores, and by the time they pay off debts for transportation and lodging, they're trapped. Anyone who tries to leave gets deported or worse. 3 workers have disappeared in the past 5 years. No investigations. No media coverage. How? Is this not public knowledge? Because the Koches own half the media in the Midwest and have politicians on payroll. Local police won't touch them. Federal agencies have been stonewalled by congressional inquiries, initiated by senators the Koches funded. It's a perfect system of corruption. Drew leaned forward. "But here's the thing, Glenn. If we can expose this, we can bring down the entire family. Not just Roy, all of them. Carolyn, too. She's on the board of Heritage Holdings. Approved the budget last year. She knows, Glenn. Your wife knows they're trafficking people." Glenn felt sick. He'd married a woman who'd hidden this from him for 9 years. Who'd smiled and played the devoted mother while her family exploited desperate people. Who'd allowed her father to burn their son's flesh as part of their twisted system. "I need proof. Something that'll hold up in court and in the press. Something they can't bury." Drew pulled out a USB drive. About encrypted files from a whistleblower inside Heritage Holdings. Payroll records showing workers making $2 an hour. Medical reports of workplace injuries with no insurance claims. And testimony from 6 workers willing to go public if we can protect them. Why haven't they come forward before? Because they're terrified. One worker tried to talk to a reporter 2 years ago. The reporter died in a car accident. The worker was deported within 48 hours. These people are smart, Glenn. They cover their tracks. Glenn took the USB drive. Then we need to be smarter. We need to move fast and hit them from multiple angles at once. If we give them time to react, they'll make evidence disappear and witnesses die. We do this right, or we don't do it all. What's the play? Glenn pulled out his laptop, opened a secure document he'd been working on. Phase 1. Document everything. We need video evidence, financial records, witness testimony, all backed up in multiple locations. Phase 2, legal assault. File simultaneous lawsuits in state and federal court. Wrongful death, labor violations, RICO charges. Phase 3, media blitz. Release everything to every major outlet on the same day. Make it impossible for them to contain the story. Phase 4, he paused. Phase 4 is personal. Meaning Roy Coke hurt my son. That's not something lawyers can fix. That's something I handle myself. Drew nodded slowly. "I'm not going to ask what you're planning. But for the record, I didn't hear that. And neither did anyone else." "Good. Because officially, I'm just a concerned father seeking custody of his son. Unofficially," Glenn's smile was cold. "Officially doesn't matter." They spent the next hour going over logistics. Drew had already contacted a journalist named Harvey Morse who'd made a career exposing corporate corruption. Harvey was interested but needed solid evidence and protected sources. Drew was also coordinating with a lawyer, Antonio Reed, who specialized in labor trafficking cases and had successfully prosecuted 2 major corporations in the past 5 years. Glenn added his own resources to the mix. Santos was recruiting former military personnel to provide security for witnesses. Glenn had reached out to Tim Jackson, a forensic accountant who'd worked with Treasury to track terrorist financing. Tim could trace every dollar the Koches had hidden offshore. And there was Ignacio Glover, a former Army Ranger turned private security contractor who specialized in extraction operations. If they needed to get witnesses or evidence out of dangerous situations, Ignacio was the best in the business. By the time Glenn left the diner, he had a team, a plan, and most importantly, he had purpose. Roy Koch thought he was untouchable, that his money and connections made him invincible. Glenn was about to teach him a hard lesson. No one was untouchable. Everyone had vulnerabilities, and when you hurt the wrong person's child, all the money in the world couldn't save you. The next morning, Glenn received a visitor, a woman in her 60s, well-dressed, carrying a designer handbag. She knocked on the door with the confidence of someone who expected to be welcomed. Glenn answered with Marcus at his side. The boy had barely left his father's presence since that night. "Mr. Castillo, I'm Leona Koch, Roy's wife, Marcus's grandmother." She smiled warmly, but Glenn saw the calculation behind it. "May I come in? I'd like to talk." Glenn considered slamming the door at her face. Instead, he said, "Marcus, go to your room and work on your homework. I'll call you when it's time for lunch." The boy hesitated, looking between his father and grandmother. Is she going to hurt me? That question, from a 7-year-old who'd learned to fear his own family, made Glenn's rage spike again. "No, buddy, she's not. I promise. Go on." Once Marcus was upstairs, Glenn let Leona in but didn't offer her a seat. "You've got 5 minutes." Leona's smile faded. "I know you're angry." "Angry?" Glenn laughed bitterly. "Your husband branded my son like cattle. Your daughter defended it. I'm way past angry, Mrs. Koch. Please, just listen." Leona sat down uninvited, folding her hands in her lap. "I didn't want this to happen. I told Roy that Marcus was too young, that we should wait. But Roy is traditional, set in his ways. The branding has been part of our family for generations. It's how we maintain unity, identity. It's child abuse. And if you're here to defend it, you can leave." "I'm not defending it." Leona's voice cracked slightly. "I'm trying to find a middle ground. Roy is willing to pay for Marcus's medical care. Top specialists, plastic surgery to minimize the scarring. And he's willing to set up a trust fund, $5 million for Marcus's future. College, whatever he needs. In exchange for what? For you to drop whatever investigation you're planning. For you to allow supervised visitation. For you to not poison Marcus against his family." Leona's eyes hardened. "Roy knows you've been digging into our business dealings. He knows you've contacted journalists and lawyers. He wants you to understand that there are consequences for attacking the Koch family." Glenn stepped closer, towering over her. "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check. The Koch family has resources you can't imagine. We could tie you up in court for years. We can make custody battles so expensive you'll lose your house. We can ensure that every government agency you ever worked for reviews your psych evaluations and deems you unfit for parenting. We can make your life hell, Mr. Castillo. Your husband already made that mistake." Glenn's voice was quiet, deadly. "He threatened me, told me he'd destroy me. You know what he didn't consider? I've faced destruction before. I've been shot at, blown up, poisoned, and hunted by people who make Roy Koch look like a playground bully. I've lost friends. Watch good men die, carry their bodies out of war zones. You think your threats scare me?" Leona stood, anger flashing. "You're a fool if you think you can win against us. We've crushed people with far more power and resources than you. Politicians, CEOs, entire companies. We're still standing. They're not. Everyone thinks they're invincible," Glenn said, opening the door. "Right up until they're not. Tell Roy I'm not interested in his blood money or his threats. Tell him I'm coming for everything he's built. And tell him that the next time someone from his family touches my son, it won't be lawyers and journalists he has to worry about. It'll be me, and I won't be polite." Leona's face paled. She walked to the door, paused. "You're making a terrible mistake." "No, Mrs. Koch. Your family made the mistake. You just haven't realized it yet. After she left, Glenn immediately called Drew. They know we're building a case. We need to accelerate the timeline. How fast? 1 week. Can you have everything ready? It'll be tight, but yeah, I'll make it happen. Drew paused. Glenn, if they're threatening you already, they might try something more direct. You and Marcus need protection. Already handled. Santos is moving in temporarily. And I've got security cameras covering every angle of the property. Anyone comes at us, I'll know about it. But that night, Glenn lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The Koches were dangerous. Not just because of their money, because they had no moral boundaries. They trafficked workers, covered up deaths, and mutilated children. What would they do to protect their empire when it was genuinely threatened? Glenn had started a war. And in war, casualties were inevitable. He just had to make sure the only casualties were the ones who deserved it. Day 5 of the operation. Glenn sat in a secure conference room in a downtown building owned by Antonio Reed's law firm. Around the table were the key players: Drew Shannon, Antonio Reed, Harvey Morse, Santos Carrillo, Tim Jackson, and Ignacio Glover. Status updates, Glenn said. Drew, we got 6 witnesses secured in safe houses across 3 states, all willing to testify about labor conditions at Coke facilities. I've also got video evidence of workers being threatened by Coke security personnel. Drew pulled up footage on a laptop. This was recorded 2 days ago at their Columbus factory. Watch. The video showed a man in a Coke manufacturing uniform cornering a worker in a stairwell. The audio was clear. You talk to any more reporters and immigration gets a call. You'll be in detention by tomorrow and on a plane by next week. Your family back home? They'll never see you again. Understand? Glenn's jaw tightened. Who's the Coke employee? Name's Philip Phelps, head of security for the Columbus facility. Former cop, fired for excessive force complaints. He's been with the Koches for 8 years. Add him to the target list. Glenn turned to Tim. Financial records? Tim Jackson pushed his glasses up, looking exhausted but satisfied. I've traced over $40 million to offshore accounts in the Caymans and Switzerland. The money's being laundered through shell companies that loop back to Heritage Holdings. I've also found payoffs to 3 state senators, 1 congressman, and 5 judges. It's all documented. Dates, amounts, bank transfers. This is RICO-level stuff. Antonio Reed nodded. With this evidence, I can file federal charges that'll trigger a full investigation. But we need to coordinate with Harvey's media release. If the story breaks before charges are filed, the Koches will have time to destroy evidence. Harvey Morse leaned forward. My editor's ready to run the story. We've got corroboration from multiple sources. But I need one more thing, a direct connection between Roy Coke and the trafficking operation. Right now, he can claim ignorance, that this was rogue employees acting without his knowledge. I need proof he knew and approved. Glenn pulled out his phone, opened an encrypted file. I've got it. Last night, I had a conversation with someone inside the Coke organization. Someone who's kept records. Who? Harvey asked. Someone with their own reasons to hate Roy Coke. They provided emails, sent from Roy's personal account, approving budget increases for worker acquisition and discussing retention protocols for employees who try to leave. There's also a memo where Roy explicitly states that workers should be discouraged from outside communication through any necessary means. It's not a smoking gun. It's an arsenal. Drew whistled. How'd you get someone inside to turn? I didn't. They reached out to me after Roy's wife visited. Apparently, I'm not the only person Roy Coke has screwed over. Turns out, when you build an empire on cruelty, eventually someone remembers and waits for the right moment to strike back. Santos spoke up. What about physical security? If we're going public in 2 days, the Koches might try to eliminate witnesses or destroy evidence. We need eyes on the facilities. Already covered, Ignacio said. His voice was gravelly, accent thick from his Texas upbringing. I've got teams watching their 3 main factories and the Heritage Holdings office. Any trucks moving out with files or computer equipment will know about it. And if they try to access the safe houses where witnesses are staying, they'll run into some very unhappy former Rangers. Glenn nodded. Good. Antonio, how long until you can file charges? 48 hours. I'm coordinating with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They want this. It's a high-profile case that'll make careers. But they need the documentation finalized. Harvey, can your story run simultaneously? Yes. We're scheduling it for Wednesday morning. Front page, above the fold. I've also got broadcast partners ready to run segments on the evening news. By Wednesday night, everyone in America will know what the Koch family has done. Glenn felt a grim satisfaction. Then we're set. Wednesday morning, we hit them from every direction at once. Legal, media, financial. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. What about you? Drew asked. What's your role in this? Glenn's expression darkened. I'm handling Roy Koch personally. That's non-negotiable. Glenn, Antonio started. I'm not asking permission, Antonio. Roy Koch burned my son's flesh to mark him as property. He's threatened to destroy me. He's running a criminal empire that's ruined countless lives. Someone needs to make him understand that actions have consequences. And it's not going to be a judge giving him a slap on the wrist. The room fell silent. Finally, Santos spoke. What do you need from us? Nothing. This part's mine. Just focus on the legal and media assault. Make sure the empire falls. I'll make sure Roy understands why. Tuesday night, Glenn tucked Marcus into bed, checking the bandage on his son's arm. The burn was healing, but the scar would be permanent. A daily reminder of what the Koch family had done. Dad, Marcus's voice was sleepy. Are we going to be okay? Yes, buddy. I promise. Everything's going to be okay. Are the bad people going to go to jail? Glenn hesitated. In a perfect world, he could tell his son that justice would prevail, that the system would protect them. But the world wasn't perfect, and Glenn had spent 21 years learning that sometimes justice required a firm hand. The bad people are going to face consequences, Glenn said carefully. They're going to lose everything they used to hurt people, and they're going to know that what they did was wrong. Good. Marcus closed his eyes. I'm glad you're my dad. You're the strongest person I know. Glenn kissed his son's forehead, turned off the light, and walked downstairs. Santos was in the living room, checking security feeds from the cameras around the property. All clear, Glenn asked. Yeah, no movement. But I've got a bad feeling, man. The Koches have been too quiet. No legal filings, no private investigators sniffing around. It's like they're just waiting. Let them wait. Tomorrow, they won't have a choice but to react. Glenn went to his office, opened a locked drawer. Inside was equipment he hadn't used since retirement. Night vision goggles, tactical gear, a suppressed Glock 19, and several items that technically violated federal law, but that he'd kept anyway. Old habits. He wasn't planning to kill Roy Koch. Despite everything, Glenn wasn't a murderer. But he was planning to deliver a message that Roy would never forget. A message that would haunt him for whatever remained of his miserable life. Tomorrow, the legal and media assault would destroy the Koch empire. Tonight, Glenn would destroy Roy Koch's peace of mind. At 0200 hours, Glenn moved through the woods surrounding the Koch estate. He'd studied the security patterns for a week. Guard rotations, camera blind spots, motion sensor ranges. The estate's security was good, but it was designed to stop casual intruders and criminals, not someone with Glenn's training. He bypassed the perimeter, scaled the wall, and moved through the gardens like a ghost. The main house was dark except for one light. Roy's study, where the old man apparently liked to work late into the night. Glenn didn't go to the house. Instead, he went to the estate's private garage, a separate building housing Roy's collection of vintage cars. 12 vehicles worth millions, each one meticulously maintained. Roy's pride and joy, according to Carolyn's stories. Glenn pulled out a can of spray paint and wrote a message across the garage door in letters 3 feet tall. Your legacy ends tomorrow. You branded my son. I'm erasing yours. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a single text to a number he'd obtained from his inside source. Roy Koch's personal cell. Look outside. Glenn watched from the tree-line as lights flickered on in the main house. 2 minutes later, Roy Koch emerged in a bathrobe, flanked by 2 security guards. He stood in front of the garage, reading the message, face illuminated by floodlights. Glenn's phone buzzed. A return text. "You're dead, Castillo." Glenn typed back, "No, but your empire is. Check the news tomorrow morning. Then call your lawyers. They're going to be busy." He pocketed the phone and melted back into the woods. He'd accomplished what he came for, delivered a message and rattled Roy Koch's confidence. By morning, the real assault would begin. And by the time it was over, the Koch family would be nothing but a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake wealth for invincibility. Wednesday morning, 6:47 a.m. Glenn sat at his kitchen table with Marcus, making pancakes and pretending everything was normal. Santos was on his laptop, monitoring news feeds. "It's live," Santos said quietly. "Harvey's story just posted." Glenn pulled out his phone. The headline screamed across the screen. "Koch manufacturing empire accused of labor trafficking, corruption, and abuse." The article was devastating. Photographs of workers in terrible conditions. Quotes from witnesses describing threats, violence, and exploitation. Financial records showing millions funneled to offshore accounts. And, most damning, emails from Roy Koch himself approving the budget for worker acquisition and discussing retention protocols. Within an hour, the story had been picked up by every major news outlet. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, The New York Times, The Washington Post. Everyone was covering it. Television crews descended on Koch facilities. Protesters appeared outside the Koch estate. Social media erupted with hashtag boycott Koch trending nationally. At 9:15 a.m., federal agents raided Koch manufacturing headquarters and the Heritage Holdings office. Antonio Reed had coordinated with the U.S. Attorney's Office, dozens of agents with search warrants, seizing computers, files, and financial records. By 10 a.m., Roy Koch, his wife Leona, and their daughter Carolyn had all been arrested on charges of labor trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy. The photographs of them being let out in handcuffs went viral immediately. Glenn watched it all unfold on live television. Marcus beside him eating cereal and watching cartoons, blissfully unaware that his father had just orchestrated the destruction of one of America's most powerful families. Santos clapped Glenn on the shoulder. "You did it, man. You actually did it." "Not yet," Glenn said. "This is just the beginning. They'll try to fight it. Hire the best lawyers, call in favors, pressure witnesses. The real battle starts now." But Glenn was wrong. The real battle was already over. Over the next 72 hours, the Koch empire collapsed like a house of cards. State after state opened investigations into Koch facilities. 6 senators returned campaign donations and publicly condemned the family. 3 judges recused themselves from pending cases involving Koch interests after their financial ties were exposed. Tim Jackson's forensic accounting revealed that the Koches had evaded over $60 million in taxes, triggering an IRS audit that froze all family assets. The SEC launched an investigation into securities fraud. Immigration and Customs Enforcement began interviewing workers at every Koch facility, discovering dozens of visa violations and labor abuses. But the most devastating blow came from within. Glenn's inside source, revealed to be Roy's nephew, George Koch, held a press conference where he detailed decades of family abuse. How his own father had been branded. How cousins who tried to leave the family had been threatened, blackmailed, or worse. How the entire Koch empire was built on a foundation of cruelty and control that spanned generations. George's testimony opened the floodgates. More family members came forward. Former employees shared stories of workplace abuse. Business partners revealed decades of fraudulent dealings. The Koches didn't just lose their empire. They lost their reputation, their freedom, and their future. Roy Koch was held without bail, deemed a flight risk given his offshore accounts and foreign contacts. Leona Koch cooperated with prosecutors, agreeing to testify against her husband in exchange for reduced charges. And Carolyn, Glenn's soon-to-be ex-wife, was arraigned on multiple felony counts and faced 20 years in federal prison. Antonio Reed secured an emergency custody order giving Glenn sole custody of Marcus, with Carolyn having no visitation rights pending the outcome of her trial. The court also granted a restraining order against the entire Koch family, prohibiting any contact with Marcus. Glenn had wanted justice. What he got was total annihilation. 2 weeks later, Glenn sat in a courthouse lobby, waiting for the final hearing that would officially dissolve his marriage to Carolyn. Marcus was with Santos at home, working on a school project. Carolyn emerged from a conference room, flanked by her public defender. Her family's assets frozen. She couldn't afford the elite lawyers anymore. She looked haggard, older, nothing like the woman Glenn had married. She stopped when she saw him. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." Glenn considered refusing, but curiosity won out. He nodded, and they sat on a bench away from the crowd. "I'm sorry," Carolyn said quietly. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I never wanted to hurt Marcus. I thought I was preparing him for the family he'd inherit. I was raised the same way. The brand, the control, the expectations. I didn't know any different." "You were on the board of Heritage Holdings," Glenn said coldly. "You knew about the trafficking. You approved the budgets. I signed papers my father told me to sign. I didn't ask questions. I should have. I know that now." Tears ran down her face. "I lost everything, Glenn. My family, my freedom, my son. I'll go to prison for years. My life is over. Workers died because of your family's operation. People were enslaved. Children were branded. Your life isn't over. It's getting what it deserves." Carolyn nodded, wiping her eyes. "Will you let Marcus know that I loved him? Even if I showed it terribly. Even if I failed him. I did love him. I'll tell him you said that. Whether he believes, it isn't up to me." Carolyn stood, shoulders slumped. "You always were stronger than me. I should have chosen you over them. But I didn't know how." She walked away, back to her lawyer, back to her uncertain future. Glenn felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger. Just a cold certainty that he'd done the right thing, even if the methods had been brutal. The divorce was finalized that afternoon. Glenn walked out of the courthouse a free man, his son safe, his enemies destroyed. 6 months later, Glenn sat on the back porch of his house, watching Marcus play in the yard with a neighbor's dog. The burn scar was still visible on his son's arm, but Marcus didn't hide it anymore. If anything, he wore it like a reminder of his strength, that he'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. Santos visited frequently, along with Drew, Antonio, and the rest of the team that had helped bring down the Koches. They'd become something like a family, bound together by shared purpose and the knowledge that they'd done something important. The Koch trials were ongoing. Roy Koch was facing 47 federal charges and likely would spend the rest of his life in prison. Leona had testified against him, receiving a 10-year sentence. Carolyn had pleaded guilty to lesser charges and received 15 years. The Heritage Holdings operation had been dismantled, with over 200 workers freed and provided with legal status and compensation. The Koch estate had been sold, the proceeds going to victim restitution. Koch manufacturing had been broken up and sold to various competitors, with employee protections written into every sale agreement. The Koch name, once synonymous with power and wealth, was now synonymous with corruption and cruelty. Glenn had won, completely, utterly. The enemies who'd hurt his son had been erased, but the victory felt hollow sometimes. Marcus still had nightmares, still flinched when he saw anyone resembling his grandfather, still asked questions that Glenn didn't know how to answer, about why his mother had allowed it, about what it meant that his own family had hurt him. Healing would take time, years probably, maybe a lifetime. Drew Shannon appeared at the fence gate, carrying a 6-pack of beer. "Thought you might want some company." Glenn nodded. "Come on in." They sat together, watching Marcus play, drinking beer in comfortable silence. Finally, Drew spoke. "You ever regret how it went down?" Glenn considered the question. "No, I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret what I did. Roy Koch built an empire on suffering. He hurt my son. Someone had to stop him. Most people would have just filed for divorce and moved on. Most people aren't trained to dismantle organizations from the inside. Most people don't have the contacts or skills to take on a billion-dollar empire." Glenn took a sip of beer. "But I do. And when someone hurts what I love, I use every tool at my disposal to make it right. You think Marcus will understand someday what you did for him? I hope so. I hope he understands that protecting the people you love isn't always clean or easy. Sometimes it requires hard choices. Sometimes it requires becoming the thing you fought against. Ruthless, calculating, willing to destroy. But the difference is in the why. I didn't do this for power or money. I did it because my son was hurt, and I had the ability to make sure it never happened again. Not just to him, but to anyone else who might have fallen into their trap. Drew nodded. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Not the legal thing, not the safe thing, but the right thing. Marcus ran up to the porch, dog at his heels. Dad, can Uncle Drew stay for dinner? I want to show him my science project. Glenn smiled. A real smile, the first in months. Of course, champ. Go wash up. We'll order pizza. Marcus hooped and ran inside, dog following. Drew raised his beer. To surviving the war. Glenn clinked his bottle against Drew's. To winning it. 1 year after the Koch empire fell, Glenn received a letter. It was from Roy Koch, sent from the federal penitentiary where he was serving his life sentence. Glenn almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won out. The letter was short. Mr. Castillo, I've had a year to think about what I did to your son, to my family, to all the people hurt by my choices. I'm writing to tell you that you were right. I built an empire on cruelty and convinced myself it was tradition. I hurt children, including my own grandson, and called it heritage. I exploited people and called it business. I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know that I understand now what I couldn't see before. That power without conscience is just tyranny. That wealth without compassion is just greed. That legacy built on suffering is no legacy at all. You destroyed everything I built. You took away my freedom, my family, my reputation. And you were right to do it, because what I built deserved to be destroyed. I hope Marcus heals. I hope he forgets me. I hope he grows up strong and kind, everything I wasn't. And I hope you know that despite everything, you won not just because you were powerful enough to defeat me, but because you were right. And I was wrong. That's all I wanted to say. Roy Koch. Glenn read the letter twice, then burned it in the fireplace. He didn't need Roy's apology or acknowledgement. He didn't need closure from a man who'd proven himself to be a monster. What Glenn needed was to focus on the future, on raising Marcus to be strong, compassionate, and aware of the world's darkness without being consumed by it, on building a life that wasn't defined by revenge or war, but by love and purpose. The past was ashes. The future was what mattered. 3 years after the Koch family fell, Glenn attended Marcus's middle school graduation. His son, now 11 years old, walked across the stage with confidence, accepting his diploma and smiling for photographs. The brand scar was barely visible anymore, faded with time and medical treatment. After the ceremony, Marcus found Glenn in the crowd. Dad, there's someone I want you to meet. He gestured to a girl standing nearby, maybe 12 years old, wearing a dress that didn't quite hide the scar on her own arm. This is Emma, Marcus said. Her family was one of the ones working for the Koch factories. She said you helped them get free and get their citizenship. The girl stepped forward shyly. Mr. Castillo, my mom told me what you did. How you helped us when no one else would. I just wanted to say thank you. Glenn felt his throat tighten. You don't need to thank me. I did what anyone should have done. But you're the only one who did, Emma said. So thank you. After she left, Marcus looked up at his father. I'm proud of you, Dad. I know what you did was hard. I know you had to do things you didn't want to do. But you did them anyway because it was right. That's what real strength is. That's what you taught me. Glenn pulled his son into a hug. I'm proud of you too, Marcus. Every single day. That night, alone in his study, Glenn reflected on the past 3 years. The Koch family was scattered. Roy in prison, Leona in a minimum security facility, Carolyn serving her sentence, and unlikely to ever see Marcus again. The empire they'd built was gone, erased, replaced by better companies with ethical practices. The workers who'd been exploited had been freed, compensated, and given new opportunities. Many had stayed in America, building new lives free from fear. Others had returned home to families they thought they'd never see again, their debts forgiven and their futures bright. And Marcus, sweet, strong Marcus, had survived. Not just survived, but thrived. He was smart, kind, and resilient. He understood that the world contained darkness, but chose to focus on light. He knew his father had done terrible things to protect him, and he accepted it without judgment. Glenn had won, not just the battle against the Koches, but the war for his son's future. Marcus would grow up free from the brand's curse, free from family that would have crushed his spirit, free to become whoever he wanted to be. That was worth everything. The risks, the danger, the moral compromises. All of it. Glenn opened his laptop and typed a final encrypted email to Drew, Santos, Antonio, Tim, Ignacio, and Harvey, the team that had made it all possible. Thank you for believing in me, for helping me protect my son, for being willing to fight when no one else would. I couldn't have done this without you. The Koches are finished. The workers are free. Marcus is safe. The mission is complete. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you know that what we did mattered, that we made a difference. Stay strong. Stay sharp. And if you ever need me, for anything, I'm here. Semper Fi. Glenn. He hit send, closed the laptop, and walked upstairs to check on Marcus. His son was asleep, peaceful, dreaming dreams that didn't include pain or fear. Glenn stood in the doorway, watching him breathe, and allowed himself a moment of pure gratitude. For his son's safety, for his team's loyalty, for the strength to do what needed to be done. Roy Koch had asked what Glenn would do if Carolyn laughed at his threats. Glenn had shown him, and in doing so, he'd proven a simple truth. The most dangerous man in any room isn't the one with the most money or the most power. It's the one with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Glenn Castillo had been that man, and he'd won.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.